Grade 5s, I'm reading you this story to go along with the novel Underground Canada, which you might be well into it, you might have just started it. And this book is called Follow the Drinking Gourd, and it takes that whole story of Underground Canada and puts it into one short story, and it uses the song Follow the Drinking Gourd, which is one of the songs of that time. And up here is a picture of the Little Dipper, and or the Big Dipper, and they would call the Dipper the drinking gourd because it reminded them of their drinking gourds. I have a gourd here, which is hollowed out, and you can drink out of it, and it's kind of, the handle goes the other way, but it's sort of the shape of the Big Dipper, and then the other stars going up the edge of the Dipper. So that's how they talked about, that's when they talked about what they were following, they would talk about following the drinking gourd. And then people would not know what they were talking about. So the story and pictures are by Jeanette Winter. And I'm going to read you the story. And there will be all sorts of connections to the novel Underground Canada. Long ago, before the Civil War, there was an old sailor called Peg Leg Joe, who did what he could do to help free the slaves. Joe had a plan. He'd use hammer and nail and saw and work for the master, the man who owned the slaves on the cotton plantation. Joe had a plan. At night when work was done, he would teach the slaves a song that secretly told the way to freedom. Just follow the drinking gourd, it said. When the song was learned and sung all day, Peg-Leg Joe would slip away to work for another master, and he would teach the song again. One day a slave called Molly saw her man James sold to another master. James would be taken away, their family torn apart. Just one more night together. Here he's on the auction block, and they're going to sell him. And this, of course, happens in Underground Canada as well. A quail called in the trees that night. Molly and James remembered Joe's song, and they sang it low. When the sun comes back and the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. For the old man is a-waiting for to carry you to freedom if you follow the drinking gourd. They looked up to the sky, and they saw the stars. Taking their little son Isaiah, old Hattie, and her grandson George, Molly and James set out for freedom that very night, following the stars of the drinking gourd. They ran all night through the fields till they crossed the stream to the woods. When the daylight came, they hid in the trees, watching, listening for the master's hounds set loose to follow them. And the dogs are stuck on the other side of the river, of the water. But the dogs lost the runaway scent at the stream, and Molly and James and Isaiah, old Hattie and young George were not found. They hid all day in the wood. At night they walked again, singing Joe's song and looking for the signs that marked the trail. The river bank makes a very good road. The dead trees will show you the way. Left foot, peg foot, traveling on. Follow the drinking gourd. Walking by night, sleeping by day, for weeks they traveled on. Sometimes berries to pick or corn to snatch. Sometimes fish to catch. But sometimes empty bellies to sleep on. And sometimes no stars to guide the way. They never knew what would lay ahead. There was danger from men who would send them back, danger from hungry beasts, and sometimes a kind deed was done. One day, as they hid in a thicket, a boy from a farm found them. In a bag of feed for the hogs in the wood, he brought bacon and cornbread for them to share. Singing low they traveled on. The river ends between two hills, following the drinking gourd. There's another river on the other side. Follow the drinking gourd. On and on they followed the trail to the river's end. From the top of the hill they saw the new path. another river beneath the stars, to lead them to freedom land. The drinking gourd led them on. The song was almost done. When the great big river meets the little river, follow the drinking gourd, for the old man's a-waiting for to carry you to freedom if you follow the drinking gourd. Then they climbed the last hill. Down below was Peg-Leg Joe, waiting at the wide Ohio River to carry them across. Their spirits rose when they saw the old man. Molly and James and Isaiah, old Hattie and George, they all ran to shore. Under a starry sky, Joe rowed them across the wide Ohio River. He told them of hiding places where they would be safe. A path of houses stretched like a train on a secret track leading north to Canada. He called it the Underground Railroad. It carried its riders to freedom. The first safe house stood on the hill. The lamp was lit, which meant it was safe to come. Ragged and weary they waited, while Joe signaled low with a hoot like an owl. Then the door opened wide to welcome the freedom travelers. They were rushed through the house into the barn, for the farmers knew there were slave catchers nearby. A trap door in the floor took them under the barn to hide till it was safe to move on. Then Peg-Leg Joe went back to the river to meet others who were following the drinking gourd. With danger still near, too close for ease, the farmer sent the 5 travelers on. He drew a map that showed the way north on the midnight road to the next safe house, just over 2 hills. This time James called the signal, the hoot like the owl. It opened the door to a Quaker farm. The travelers were led to a secret room, hidden behind shelves. They rested there for many days and healed their many wounds. Soft beds, full meals, new clothes, hot baths washed away some of the fear and pain. Isaiah smiled. When they were strong, they traveled again from house to house on that underground railway, still following the drinking gourd north. Sometimes they traveled on foot, sometimes they traveled by cart. The wagon they rode near the journey's end carried fruit to market and the runaways to freedom. At last, they came to the shores of Lake Erie. Molly and James and Isaiah, old Hattie and young George, climbed aboard the steamships that would carry them across Lake Erie to Canada, to freedom. 5 more souls are safe, cried old Hattie. The sun shone bright when they stepped on the land. They had safely followed the drinking gourd. So in one picture book, and there's the song that Peg-Leg Joe sang to them. So in this one story, it tells you the whole story of underground Canada. So it's a good story to give you a sense of what that book is going to be about.